Good evening. My name is Diane Wells, and I'm a commissioner on the Montclair Community Activities Commission and one of the hosts of this event. On behalf of our members, I want to welcome all of you who are watching the 2020 General Municipal Election Montclair City Council Candidates Forum tonight. The purpose of tonight's event is to help you become more informed about the candidates running for the City Council seats. This event is co-sponsored by the Montclair Community Activities Commission and the Montclair Chamber of Commerce. Before we start this evening, I want to mention that this year, due to the COVID-19, our program for this event was changed to a recorded format rather than live programs. Questions for the candidates were able to be submitted prior to the event through the city's website. At this time, questions are no longer being accepted for this year's forum. We thank all of you who took the time to submit a question and want to remind you that due to the time constraints of the program, it's possible that not all questions submitted will be asked of the candidates. This forum is organized and structured, and to help us moderate tonight, it is my pleasure to introduce a member of the Montclair Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Tim Walborn. Tim is a lifelong area resident and attended Chaffee High School and Cal Poly Pomona. He is currently the branch director for the Youth and Family branch of the West End YMCA. Tim has been serving the communities of Montclair and Ontario for over 12 years. He is currently a member of the Montclair Chamber of Commerce and is past president of the Ontario Rotary Club. Tim, we thank you for being here this evening to serve as the moderator of this event. Now I will turn the program over to you.
Thank you, Diane. On behalf of the Montclair Chamber and the board and the businesses we represent, we would like to also welcome you who are watching the event and the candidates for coming out tonight and sharing their opinions and hopefully to try to win your votes. At this point, I would like to ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Community Activities Commission Vice Chair Darlene Ferraro.
Please join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Darlene. I will be moderating 3 segments of the forum. Candidates will make an opening statement, followed by a question and answer period, and concluding with closing statements. All segments will be timed by our timekeeper, Community Activities Vice Chair Darlene Ferraro. The forum is being recorded and will air live. Won't air live, it's being recorded. Will air on the Government Access Channel, Channel 3, beginning at 7 p.m., Monday, October 19th, and every evening through Election Day on November 3rd. For your convenience, the forum can also be accessed on the city's website, Facebook page, and YouTube channel. All of these viewing options will be available on October 19th, which is next Monday. As you can see, all of our candidates are seated on the stage. The seating arrangement for the candidates was determined by a random drawing earlier this evening. For opening statements, the rotation will be from the east to the west. For closing statements, the rotation will be from the west to the east. And during the question and answer period, the rotation will be from the east to the west, beginning with one person west each new question. So it starts with somebody new each time. So each of you get a chance to go first, and then it'll cycle through there. Each candidate will have an opportunity to make a 3-minute opening statement. The structure and content of the opening statements are at the discretion of the candidate. A typical opening statement may include the following: candidate's qualifications, why a candidate regards themselves as the best leadership choice for the office, issues important to the candidate, and visionary comments regarding the candidate's outlook for Montclair. Candidates may wish to highlight their public service to the community and make observations regarding the need to maintain the status quo or may want to make observations regarding their perceived need to change the established order. Each candidate will be advised when their opening statement is approaching the time limit and when their time is over. Each candidate should make concluding comments when 1 minute remaining sign is held up. After the completion of all opening statements, candidates will respond to written questions that have been submitted online prior to this event. Every effort has been made to include all the questions submitted, and all were reviewed for the purpose of appropriateness and to eliminate duplications. As the moderator, I will address all questions to the candidates. I will present questions to candidates in the following manner. 1, questions of general interest and concern will be presented to all of you. General questions will be randomly selected or can be directed toward a specific candidate. And 3, questions that have been submitted for a specific candidate may be selected and asked of that candidate. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. This is the process designed for this forum, and there will be no deviation from the format. Following the question and answer period, each candidate will have the opportunity to make a 3-minute closing statement. The structure and content of the closing statements are at the discretion of each candidate. A typical closing statement may include the following: rebuttal comments, re-emphasis of a previous discussion, and the responsibility to vote. Each candidate will be advised when their closing statement is approaching the 1-minute mark. The candidate should then make your concluding comments. All right, we ready to start? Okay, let's do this. Okay, this evening we will start with the opening statement from candidate Orozco. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, community, family, and friends. Thank you for coming tonight or viewing this tonight. Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce and Community Action Committee and their involvement with the forum this evening. I am Juliet Orozco, and I'm running for City Council because we need to continue with the momentum of the city moving forward during this unprecedented time. I'm asking for your vote because we need to continue with the changes we have been making and to provide strong leadership to this wonderful city. A leadership that is interested in providing the quality of life for all. As a councilwoman, I will work together with all other council members, the mayor, city manager, to ensure we are making improvements and changes for all residents. I look forward to doing my part as a council member to improve the community we all want to live in. I believe the importance of working together to develop the city, to continue to improve street projects, to parts of the city that have been underdeveloped. I will collaborate with the community on establishing goals for safe neighborhoods and to provide business opportunities. All these improvements will provide a great place to live, raise a family, and our businesses will flourish. I will advocate effectively on your behalf. I will work on the following: Montclair business environment, community development, safer schools, streets, and neighborhoods. I will also work with law enforcement to patrol more, hire more police officers, focus on the fire department to provide incentives to stay in Montclair. I will strive to serve my home, Montclair, by working on the issues that improve the quality of life for residents throughout our great city. I will bring a common sense approach to problem solving and intend to make significant and positive contributions to ensure our taxpayer dollars are not wasted. For the past 19 years, I have called the city of Montclair my home. I have been married for 35 years, and together we have raised 4 boys. We also have a 13-year-old granddaughter. I have worked at the Ontario Montclair School District for over 19 years, where I manage the payroll and benefit department for over 3,000 employees. I have held elected positions with several groups. With my experience, I will serve the community with dependability and integrity. It would be my pleasure to bring a different perspective of what the city is needing to move forward during this unprecedented time. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Orozco. Candidate Miranda, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Oscar Miranda. When I started this campaign, it wasn't necessarily to become an elected official within the city. although if that were to happen, I would be deeply honored. The reason why I started this campaign is because I felt there needed to be a little bit more engagement with the community and a little bit more transparency. With that, I'd like to disclose a few things. My campaign, I'm running two campaigns. One is my campaign for city council. The second is my campaign that opposes the tax measure out. Both of these campaigns are funded 100% by myself. There is no outside influence. With that, I would encourage everybody who's watching this video to go and visit the city website when you have some free time and look at all the candidates as well as the committees for the tax measure. In there, you'll be able to find financial disclosures. In there, you'll also notice that some campaigns are being funded by businesses that have contracts with the city. And if you look at that, some of these businesses that have contracts with the city, the owners of the businesses don't live here, and the businesses themselves don't reside within the city. So the funding for these campaigns are being given to these campaigns by businesses whose only purpose is to continue the contracts with the city and maintain their cash flow. And I would just say that that's why I'm running for city council, is to help the community engage more with what's going on within your city and why some of the decisions are being made by the city council. And the reason why I talk about this is because taking funds from businesses that the city contracts with creates a conflict of interest. And if there's a conflict of interest, how can we be sure that the decisions are truly being made in the best interest of the residents as opposed to the best interest of some of these business entities? Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Miranda. Candidate Lopez, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Fellow Montclair residents, I am Benjamin Lopez, a familiar face and advocate running once again for Montclair City Council. I'm the only candidate up here that is a lifetime resident of our city. I'm a small businessman, a former county commissioner, and present Little League coach that I may have coached maybe some of your kids in Little League. I have over 25 years involvement in our city, serving and giving back to the community that has been good to me. This is the city I grew up in, the city where I myself learned how to play Little League football. I actually remember attending Margarita Elementary School when it existed, and I was even one of the opponents that fought against its closure. I fought for crossing guards in Montclair and still do. I was even a volunteer crossing guard at one time in our city at a young age. I have deep roots in our city that go back 4 generations, even before Montclair was a city and commonly referred to as Monte Vista. Family actually owned a house on Monte Vista Avenue. I'm proud to say that every generation in my family has had at least one member that has served in the military, and I can relate to being a veteran family. Outside the walls of this building, there's a plaque that actually bears my grandfather's name, honoring his service in the Korean War. Like many of you, I share some of the hardships in making ends meet, especially during this era of COVID. I know how important city programs are for families, seniors, youth, and so forth. Members of my own family are on fixed incomes like many are of you. I see the struggles firsthand families face. That is why I support and will not cut senior health and meal programs in the city. I know how crucial all programs are, from Healthy Montclair, Montclair After School Program, the Youth Center, Little League and soccer programs, Montclair to College, senior nutrition programs, Golden Express Bus for seniors, Meals on Wheels. In fact, in 2017, I wrote an elaborate letter against President Trump's attempt to cut the Meals on Wheels program in this city. My involvement in Montclair goes back when I was 13. I haven't given up. I'm still around. My passion is with the people in Montclair. I would love the honor of serving you on the city council. We've come pretty darn close, and it's not time to give up now. I kindly ask for your vote. Mayor Dutre, Councilmember Bill Rue, Supervisor Kurt Hagman, the Montclair Firefighters Association, San Bernardino County Firefighters, and the Inland Empire Taxpayer Association all endorse me. I kindly ask for your vote and consideration, either voting by mail or at the polls on November 3rd. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you, Candidate Lopez. Candidate Johnson, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Walborn. Hello, Montclair. My name is Tenice Johnson, and it's been my privilege to serve as your city council member. Tonight, I want to talk to you about leadership, because I want you to understand that leadership is not about a title. It's not about a standalone concept. Leadership is action. It's what you do. So I want to tell you about some of the things that I've done. My family and I moved here in 1991, and I've been busy serving this city almost from the very beginning. Shortly after we moved here, there was a disaster preparedness programs to make sure that neighbors could take care of themselves in the case of a disaster, and I was a part of that. I'm proud to say that I was a part of that. And then because we had children, and they're the two most active children you've ever seen, but my husband was always their coach, and I was their team mom. And we did a lot for youth and youth programs because it's the right thing to do. Then I also spent some time because I was interested in housing, because during that time, it was difficult for people to obtain housing. And so I sat on the board of directors at Neighborhood Partnership of Montclair to make sure that low and moderate income people could obtain housing. And as part of that effort, once they got those houses, we wanted to make sure that they were able to maintain them, because it's, that's the right thing to do, to make sure they could maintain them. And we also had programs for seniors, because there's some things seniors can't do. They can't install their own door hardware. They can't paint their own houses. So once a year, we'd have a paint-a-thon, or we would paint seniors' houses. I also spent some time on the Community Activities Commission, serving the residents of this community for their social and recreational needs, and that was very important during that time. And then I spent about 20 years as a planning commissioner, because infrastructure is important. You have to do it right, or your city won't look right. It'll be consumed with blight. And so for the 20 years I spent on the Planning Commission, I'm very proud to see some of the projects that have come to fruition. One of the most recent was the Cardenas Market that opened today. I spent lots of time with seniors because they need our attention. It's the right thing to do. And so I have spent almost 3 decades taking care of the residents in this community. And as your councilwoman, I will continue to support all of those programs, because that's the right thing to do. If you're interested in a council person who has strong leadership skills and can get things done, vote Tenice Johnson, Montclair City Council.
Thank you, Candidate Johnson. Candidate Pipersky, you have 3 minutes.
I would like to thank the CAC and the City of Montclair for hosting this City Council Candidates Forum tonight. My name is Rob Pipersky, and I am seeking the City Council seat vacated by the retirement of my friend Carolyn Raft. I have been employed as a police officer in the city for 40 years. As a police officer, I have a unique perspective on the problems within the city. My current assignment within the police department is Public Safety Administrative Services Supervisor. My duties have been working on both police and fire department budgets, as well as purchasing needed equipment for both departments. I was the project coordinator for locating and refurbishing the new ladder truck, saving the city $1.2 million. I am also in charge of the Emergency Operations Center and am liaison with the San Bernardino County Health Department, and was instrumental in having the first COVID-19 drive-through testing site in Montclair. The testing continues today as a walk-in site located at the Montclair Trans Center, the future home of the Gold Line to Montclair. Having served 40 years as a police officer, I look forward to my continued service to the citizens of Montclair. I have the endorsements of the City Council, Carolyn Raft, Bill Rue, Carissa Martinez, and Tenice Johnson, whom I also support and endorse for the second seat on the Montclair City Council. I have gained knowledge by always being involved in the city as an employee, a volunteer, and resident, seeing firsthand the needs of the residents and listening, and sometimes working with my wife with issues with the senior citizens she would face. The City of Montclair has some difficult times facing us. We must fully fund the police department, fire department, and public works. All departments are suffering workforce shortages. As many as 17 officers in the police department, 8 persons in the fire department, and close to that in public works. Montclair needs to retain all our employees to better serve you, and the city is not used as a training ground for other agencies. We need to thank our employees, not have another agency thank us for that employee. We must take the first steps in making Montclair once again a city others seek to be a part of. I want to thank City Manager Ed Starr for his dedication in making the best decisions with the budget he has given. It is important that Measure L is passed to provide the money needed to make the changes to better serve the residents of Montclair. The City of Montclair has given me an inside look in how hard the employees work, often giving their time for free. As a resident of the city for over 25 years, I am married to my beautiful wife, Esther, who recently retired from the City of Montclair as Senior Citizen Supervisor. Although my wife is fighting an illness, she still continues to volunteer from home. I hope to be elected so I can continue serving the residents of Montclair.
Thank you, candidate Pipersky. Okay, we will now enter the time of our general questions. You will have 2 minutes to answer, and we will start with candidate Orozco, the first question, and then we'll move down the line. What issues compelled you to run for city council, and where do you stand on each of these issues? You have 2 minutes.
Well, this is my third time running, and the issues are somewhat the same. The infrastructure that we need to do, the housing that we need to work on. Now that we have the coronavirus, we have to get the businesses back in. That's our, revenue that we have. To get those programs for these businesses to stay and to work, there's a lot of grants that are out there that can help the businesses as well as the city. So there's a lot of issues that we have that I want to work through with the mayor and with the city employees and with everybody. As other candidates had said, the police department, the fire department, they're doing more with less. So I want to make sure that we focus on them as well as the city workers, not to have layoffs. I want to make sure that Measure L, the 1% tax, is passed, because I think that's going to be very important for our city, for our revenue. And the most important thing is it will stay in the city. It will be for the members of, the community and not for the surrounding cities. A 1% tax will be, $7 million to $9.2 million for our city, which is a great start. And I think that that's, one of the reasons that I've come to run again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Miranda, what issues compelled you to run for city council, and where do you stand on each of these issues?
Well, starting at the federal level, the issues that compelled me was sitting at home and going through what we all went through with COVID and seeing how everything got politicized. From there, looking at the local level and mainly looking at the tax measures that the city was proposing, and then doing some more research and looking into the local government in all aspects as much as I could do so within the past few months. And in doing so, some of these things seemed to me that they just didn't add up, kind of like Ms. Orozco was referring to the tax measure. It's a regressive tax. The way it taxes the lower income families compared to the upper income families is disproportionate. And the reasons for doing this income tax or this sales tax just strike me, because if you look at the budget, there's reserves. If you look at the measures that the city could partake in to increase funds, revenue without increasing the sales tax, there's still other options. I just don't feel that the city has exhausted all measures. And to me, while I'm not completely against increasing sales tax to generate more revenue, because the city has wonderful programs and they do need to be funded, it just doesn't seem that it's the time or the place to do that at this time when a lot of these families don't even know what their future lies, and we're going to be taxing them when the city still has reserves. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Lopez, what issues compelled you to run for city council, and where do you stand on each of those issues?
There are no doubt a variety of important issues, and they shouldn't be ranked from 1 to 5, 1 to 10, whatever your laundry list is. They're all of equal importance. So with that, I have said, and everyone that has followed me knows me, I have been a big advocate of our police and fire department, and particularly our fire department, in making sure that staffing levels are increased, not decreased. They have adequate resources and funding, so they can, for our police can actually do their jobs without having one hand tied behind their back. Fire have all the adequate resources they need. They don't just deal with fires, they also deal with medical service calls as well, and a whole gamut of other calls that they get. But police and fire are critically important in maintaining the safety of our residents in the streets and neighborhood and our business community, but we must also make sure that the gold line does indeed come. We must advocate for outside funding sources so the brunt of the expense does not rely solely on Montclair. And the city and the council and the city manager have done great strides to make sure that the gold line is a top priority. But let's also secure the vitality of the Montclair Plaza. I still call it Montclair Plaza. I've been here since I was a kid. It'll always be Montclair Plaza to me, but we must ensure that the site there at Montclair Plaza keeps up with technology and the way people purchase and buy and sell goods. But we also make sure that it is a evolving development that addresses the needs of the times. But let's attract businesses. Let's also maintain the funding for our senior programs, our health, their health programs, Little League programs. I know that we're in a predicament with the economy getting a little bit contracted and there's not as much income in, but nonetheless, those should be a priority and funded to the extent possible.
Thank you. Candidate Johnson, what issues compelled you to run for city council, and where do you stand on each of these issues?
Well, early on, when my husband and I were newlyweds, we lived in a different city then, and we bought what we thought was a nice house in a nice neighborhood. And it seemed like within a very short period of time, just a few years, we looked around and we were surrounded by violence and drugs and all kind of horrible things. And as we were just having our children, we didn't want to raise our children there, and so we moved to Montclair. And the transition was so difficult, I told my husband, I'm never moving again. I'm going to live in Montclair till I die, and when I die, you can bury me in the backyard. So I think the reason why that neighborhood turned so is because I wasn't paying attention. And so that's why when we got to Montclair, I've been paying very close attention to what happens in this city. And I think it's my personal responsibility, which is why I have been working for the residents of this city for as long as I can. Being appointed to the Montclair City Council was just the next step in that, and I'm still paying very close attention to what happens here. It's important that our police and fire get what they need, because when we call 911, we want them to come. It's important that the youth and the seniors are taken care of because they are vulnerable and we need to protect them. And so the reason I'm running is to make sure that I have a seat at the decision maker's table so that I can ensure that the programs that I think are important to families still keep going and that they improve.
Thank you. Candidate Pipersky, what issues compelled you to run for city council, and where do you stand on each of those issues?
Well, I've been a police officer in this city for 40 years. I've got to see this city from 20,000 people up to 40,000. As the city grows, a lot of our manpower throughout the city has dwindled. We were at 232 people. We're down 64 people now, down to 168, I believe it is. We need to bring up our manpower so we can better serve the residents of Montclair. We need to make sure that we continue to take care of our people. As a police officer, I've been lucky enough to sit there and deal with a lot of not only the criminal element, but the victims of crimes. I get to see these people, and I got to hold their hands and take care of them. I got to see where they were coming from. I need to make sure that those people are continued to being taken care of. On the council, I have a voice in how things are taken care of within the city. So those are my main reasons are to get the city back on track, get the people back, and be able to take care of the citizenry that we have.
Thank you. Okay, our second question this evening is a yes or no question, and we will start with candidate Miranda. At the November 3rd, 2020 general municipal election, Montclair residents will vote on a local measure to protect essential public safety and community programs. Measure L will take the city's existing sales tax rate of 8% to 9%, generating approximately $7 million in local revenue. Do you support Measure L? Please give a yes or no answer only, as there will be a follow-up question where you can elaborate further. Yes or no?
No.
Candidate Lopez, do you support Measure L?
I'll reserve the answer for the follow-up question.
Is that a yes or a no?
I'll reserve the answer for the follow-up question, sir.
Okay. Candidate Johnson, do you support Measure L?
Yes, I do.
Candidate Pipersky, do you support Measure L?
Absolutely.
Candidate Orozco, do you support Measure L?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so question number 3, and we start with you, Candidate Lopez. Follow-up question. Based on the current revenue trends and impacts of the public health emergency on the economy, the city will be required to implement an estimated $3 to $5 million in reduced expenditures for services and personnel over the next several years. If Measure L is not approved by Montclair voters, under this scenario, which programs and services would you propose to cut in order to balance the budget? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, sir. I'm actually one of those voters that may be on the fence on this issue. As I've said in the Daily Bulletin, and I want to be consistent with my statements, thus me not giving a yes or no answer at this time, the city is in a catch-22 situation. We have a financial hit that we suffered, no fault of our own, but due to the COVID-19 situation that has caused deep decreases in funding to the city. On one hand, we have lost revenue, and the city is still tasked with the burden of providing services that the residents have come to expect. I fully support the continuation of all services and programs that we as residents need and have relied upon. I don't want to see those cut, but we have a decrease in funding. I believe, if my figures are correct, I think we have a $13 million hit. We're going to have $35 million in deferred maintenance that may happen if it doesn't pass. On the other hand, I understand many families are also suffering and taking a financial hit themselves. Many aren't working, and many may not want to approve a tax in these economic times. Therein is the dilemma, and it's very serious. It's no one's fault. I just think that people need to make their own decision. I will respect whatever decision, and if elected, I will, with the colleagues, the other 4 remaining members of the council, we will look at the issues if it does not pass and look at areas where we need to bring in some extra funds, and we'll have to go to Plan B and see how we can secure and provide the same degree of funding and programs that we have. But there again is the dilemma.
Thank you. Candidate Johnson, based on the current revenue trends and impacts of the public health emergency on the economy, the city will be required to implement an estimated $3 to $5 million in reduced expenditures for services and personnel over the next several years. If Measure L is not approved by Montclair voters, under this scenario, which programs and services would you propose to cut in order to balance the budget?
Thank you, Mr. Walborn. I can't begin to fathom what else we could cut. When this pandemic happened and we had the financial impacts that we did, there were major slashes and cuts to every single budget of every department in the city across the board. And consequently, the services that we offer to our residents has also been reduced. And I can't imagine that we would cut any lower. But here's what I want to talk to you about with Measure L. It's not what it's not. It's not a mandatory tax. It's not like a property tax. It's not a utility tax. It's only a retail sales tax, and you only pay it if you make a purchase. So here's an example. One of the traditions in my family is that I always buy my children, even though they're old adults now, but I always buy them Christmas stocks, and they usually cost about $4. If Measure L passes, and I buy a pair of socks for $4, that will be 4 pennies that goes into the city coffers. Now, do all of you remember being small children and either your parents or your grandparents had you save coins in a jar or some other vessel to save up for something that you could do later, maybe it was a summer trip or whatever, that 4 pennies goes into the city coffers. And it sounds like a little, but Measure L is projected to raise a great deal of revenue that we need to serve the people here in Montclair. And if we don't get that passed, if that does not pass, then we're going to have to take some very strategic work to get other avenues of revenue.
Thank you. Candidate Pipersky. Based on the current revenue trends and impacts of the public health emergency on the economy, the city will be required to implement an estimated $3 to $5 million in reduced expenditures. If Measure L is not approved by the Montclair voters, under this scenario, which programs and services would you propose to cut in order to balance the budget?
Well, like some people sit there and say, well, I don't want to cut anything. I'm just going to sit there and do the best we can. The fact of the matter is, cuts would have to be made, and they'd have to be made across the board. Unfortunately, as council members just approve the cuts that are made by the department heads throughout the city. The city, we would have a percentage that we would have to take from every single program within this city, and we would have to start making cuts. Would that be layoffs? In some cases, yes. Would some people be terminated? Yes. The unfortunate part is, if there's no money, you can't pay. You cannot sit there and generate funds that are not there. Like Councilwoman Johnson said, the Measure L tax is 1 cent. If you want to take 1 cent, you take 1/3 of one M&M out of a package. That's 1 cent. You do not pay this tax on diapers, the things that most people will buy normally. You don't pay it on foodstuffs. You don't pay it on diapers. You don't pay it on prescription medicines, vegetables, or any of the other items that a normal Montclair resident would purchase. 80% of this tax would be generated by people outside the city coming into our city and spending money here. If they wanted to go to LA and purchase something, they would pay more tax than they would pay here. I can see that Measure L will in all probability pass. I hope that it will, but I do not want to see the cuts that would have to be made otherwise. But cuts would have to be made.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Orozco. If Measure L is not approved by Montclair voters, under that scenario, which programs and services would you propose to cut in order to balance the budget?
Cutting any program is very difficult because it affects everybody. The economic uncertainty due to the pandemic is one of the city's biggest issue. We need to help our businesses with programs to stay in the business, to stay in the Montclair, which will help our revenue. Our businesses need to remain committed to our city to help our residents. And the 1% tax is important to the city of Montclair. It will raise, like I stated, $7 million to $9.2 million. The money will help prevent layoffs with our fire, police, and other city workers. It also will fund new expenditures that are needed with the growth of our city. We should not cut jobs, but we need to work together to help support the city with the upcoming shortfalls. We need to get together. We need to see what other cities are doing. Everybody's going through the same thing, but we need to look and put our heads together, look at the experts that are already working at the city to see what they recommend, to see what they see. This isn't the first time that we are in an economic downfall. We had it in 2008 when we had the recession. So what worked back then, what didn't work, and try everything we can to get together, come together with a census to see what we can do so that nothing is cut. But if we do need to cut, it's going to be a hard decision. And we just need to work together to find some other ways. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Miranda. The city may be required to implement an estimated $3 to $5 million in reduced expenditures for services and personnel over the next several years if Measure L is not approved by Montclair voters. Under that scenario, which programs and services would you propose to cut in order to balance the budget?
That question reminds me of a saying, Never let a good crisis go to waste. The way that question is asked, it's as if we don't approve this tax measure, all these programs are going to have to get cut in some way. But the truth is, there's plenty of reserves thanks to our wonderful city manager. He's done a great job. Now, why we don't just talk about tapping into those reserves, I don't know. This isn't a business, it's a government entity that serves the public. On top of that, there's other ways to generate revenue without first taxing the residents. Like I said, I'm not against taxes. I'm against taxes before they're required. And one of those is by adopting a proposal that came to council, I believe last year or in the past few years, and talking about implementing legalization of cannabis dispensaries. Now, that's not a cure-all for the deficit that you're talking about, but it would generate revenue between $500,000 to $2 million. On top of that, you have Mr. Starr, our city manager, as well as some people on task force that look after the problem of illegal cannabis dispensaries, and how they talk about not only would it generate revenue, but it would also ease the workload on our own police officers. It could also generate some more revenue by the fines, because now you're actually fining people for something that they're doing wrong, where currently the city is sending police officers to go out there and try to fine people for doing something, for selling a product that's completely legal in the state of California. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Candidate Johnson, we will be starting with you. With the COVID-19 pandemic, the City of Montclair has implemented a series of emergency directives aimed at reducing the spread of the virus. These emergency directives include the wearing of face masks in public and inside businesses. Do you support this directive? Why or why not?
Thank you, Mr. Walborn. Yes, I do support this directive because while I'm not a medical doctor, but the people who are physician scientists, they're telling us that this is what protects us. And we have all seen when, after the pandemic started and when certain things were open and there were huge crowds, we see the infection rate spike. So, of course, this is helpful. It protects not only the wearer, but it protects the other people who are around us. And frankly, and it's my personal opinion, I probably might be the only one who does this, but after this pandemic is over, I might still be wearing a mask just because it feels like I'm protecting myself. So I think that the city manager and the task force that worked on that program did the right thing, even though some of our colleagues in other cities did not. But I'm proud to announce that we held firm here in the city of Montclair and kept all the standards in place to protect Montclair residents.
Thank you. Candidate Pipersky. With the COVID-19 pandemic, the City of Montclair has implemented a series of emergency directives aimed at reducing the spread of the virus. These emergency directives include the wearing of masks in public and inside businesses. Do you support the directive? Why or why not?
I absolutely support the directive. Now, you can see there's, depending on the doctors you talk to, some sit there and say masks are not working, others say they are. I side with the ones that say they are working. I believe that it will reduce the spread of the virus, and at some point, most everyone's going to get it. My wife has been isolated more than anyone else around. She has a lung disorder. She caught COVID in our house, but she always wears a mask. Is a mask 100% effective? No, but I do support the directive. I do believe it will help society in the long run, and like Ms. Johnson said, after the COVID-19, we're going to have another disease come through, and I think people are going to start wearing that mask. I don't think they're going to panic as much because they're going to be used to it through COVID. But Mr. Starr and his directives all throughout the entire pandemic, I was there from the very first one enforcing those rules.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Orozco, do you support the city's emergency directives as it relates to COVID-19, and why or why not?
You know, it has had a great impact. It's real. It causes many problems. You have the mild cases, you have the severe cases, and you have the long haulers. You know, it impacts everyone in one way or another. For example, work, unemployment, medical, and financial stability. We should continue to offer support to our businesses by providing, wearing a mask when we go in there, that have been able to remain open and advocate for those struggling to stay open because, or that have closed. To answer the question, the mask is a necessity to wear a mask to protect others and yourself. And as Councilman Bill Rue stated, and I'm not going to quote completely, but isn't it easier to breathe with a mask than it is with a ventilator? So I believe that we should wear a mask for our own protection and others around us. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Miranda, do you support the city's emergency directives for mask wearing as it relates to COVID-19?
Yes, I support it, and I applaud Mr. Starr and City Council for keeping that mask, the wearing of the mask intact. They're listening to the experts, and that's what we should do at a time like this. I mean, Dr. Fauci himself, I mean, he's been studying infectious diseases as long as I've been alive. And if he says to wear a mask, then I'll wear a mask. And that's why, for me, I support it, and I appreciate the work that Mr. Starr and City Council has done on that issue.
Okay, thank you. This next line of questions, we will start with candidate Pipersky. Do you support the regulation of cannabis sales both for medical and adult use in the city of Montclair? Oh, I'm so sorry. You were. You may go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
No problem. I need all the airtime I can get. I take the position that we should follow the county health directive from San Bernardino County Board of Health, the County Department of Health, rather, and follow the directives from our Board of Supervisors. Last I checked, no staff here has the credentials like our county health department does. What I will say is, I don't like in society, and this should not happen within our city limits, is the public shaming of those who may not have a mask. Let's not assume everyone can wear a mask, and that's why these health directives, at least coming from the feds and the state and the county, state that those that have medical conditions that can't wear them, they should not be able to wear them. And let's not assume that they're just being ornery and objecting just to make a point. I'm in a category where I am considered high risk. I wear the mask. I use hand sanitizer, which, by the way, thank you for providing this tonight. And I take precautions as I feel comfortable and as needed. But I do wear a mask. But I would like for us to say, for all of us to be wise, let's not act on fear, let's not be paranoid, and let's not shame others. We are a community that should respect one another, regardless of differences, even if it is your position on mask wearing or hand washing or using sanitation or whatnot. But having said that, I would greatly rely on county health and the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to question 5. I apologize for that. Start with you, candidate Pipersky. Do you support the regulation of cannabis sales both for medical and adult use in the city of Montclair? Discuss why you do or why you do not. You have 2 minutes.
I've been a law enforcement officer for 40 years. The entire time we've sat there and we've enforced it. Marijuana's been illegal. It has now been legalized in the state of California for recreational use and medical use. People seem to think that marijuana is going to be a panacea, that's going to be a great deal of money being made from this. It's been an illegal crop for so many years, and people have been dealing with it illegally. I don't think they're automatically going to be honest about their reporting for tax purposes. Recreational use of marijuana, where we could tax it, why would someone want to use recreational marijuana when they go to the local park and get a medical marijuana certificate, which is tax-free? You don't have to pay tax on medical marijuana. I do not condone the use of marijuana. I do not like the use of marijuana, but I will support it. And when we sit there and have a medical or a marijuana ordinance in the city, I will support it. Because we need to control this. we need to make sure we know where it's at, where it's located. If we allow the illegal clinics to come in, we have no control over there. We cannot regulate it. I believe in the regulated use of marijuana just like we regulate alcohol sales. You can have high-end alcohol sales, you can have high-end marijuana sales. But if you regulate it to or put it in an area where it's a slime or a less than stellar area, it will develop a less than stellar clientele. So I don't condone it, but I will support it when the time comes.
Thank you. Candidate Orozco, do you support the regulation of cannabis sales both for medical and adult use in the city of Montclair? Discuss why you do or why you do not.
Well, as I stated before, it's inevitable. It was passed. It's important for the city to be proactive instead of reactive. Put the rules, have the city put the rules in place to ensure that the ones making the decisions is the city to what is allowed and what they can and can't do. Rules to keep the dispensary in compliance. And it's probably not a lot of tax, but it's some tax, and it could save a program. So if we have it come in and, if they're in our city, then let's utilize it and use that tax to save a program. Whether if it's the seniors, the high school, one program that it would save would be a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Miranda, do you support the regulation of cannabis sales both for medical and adult use in the city of Montclair? Discuss why you do or why you do not.
I do support it, and I would encourage anybody out there who's on the fence about this issue to go to the city website and listen to the audio on one of the workshops where there was a presentation by Mr. Starr, our city manager. Beautiful, beautiful presentation. I mean, there's so many more pros to legalizing it than there are cons to continuing doing what we're doing right now, which is allowing illegal cannabis to be within our city limits. It's there already, and it's just having so much more of a negative effect by allowing that rather than just simply passing the law, taking in the revenue from it, and easing the burden on our police force, trying to regulate something that's already legal but apparently not in our city because city council hasn't approved it yet. Rather than doing that and continuing just sending our police force out there to try to regulate something that doesn't need regulating in the way that they're trying to do it and wasting funds on it, listen to Mr. Starr and how he talks about how regulating it can also generate funds to supply funds so that it can be self-regulated, so that it eases the burden on us financially as a city and eases the workload on the police force. There's just so many more positives to just doing it and legalizing it as opposed to just continuing to do what we're doing and saying that it's illegal even though in the state of California it's legal.
Thank you. Candidate Lopez, do you support the regulation of cannabis sales, both for medical and adult use in the city of Montclair? Discuss why you do or why you do not.
I believe it was Prop 64. I think I got the number right. Yeah, thank you. That voters passed, I believe 4 years ago now, that allowed for the recreational use of marijuana and a whole series of plant growing, a certain number on a property, et cetera, et cetera. If we don't do something, we will be subject to potential lawsuits, and those threats have been bantered around as we speak. And we got to do something to alleviate and eliminate those potential threat of lawsuits. I want to bring a point, though. Mr. Pipersky is correct. If anyone thinks that marijuana is going to be this cash cow that'll solve all problems and be a never-ending bank, it is not going to be, but it will provide additional income. It won't be the main savior, though, however. And regarding reserves, I know the comment was made earlier that we have reserves. Yes, we do, but once they're spent, they take years to replenish, so we can't just tap into reserves. That's why I would be open to allowing some marijuana ordinance within the city limits. For the past 2 election cycles, I brought this up and it still isn't addressed. Dr. Lawley owns a medical clinic where he serves veterans on Fremont and San Bernardino Avenue, and he's been asking for the right to prescribe medical marijuana to his veteran patients. Why the hell has that not been addressed yet? We should have made an exemption and granted him that, but we need to control it, we need to regulate it, and we need to do everything we can to make sure that we can tax and bring in any avenue of additional sources so that way the burden doesn't fall on the taxpayers in this city. I don't fault the police for cracking down on them currently. They're doing their job. That is the present policy. But I don't want us at the same time to be the only draw on the Inland Empire to come for people to get their marijuana. There is a balance, but I would concur with nearly all the comments that have been made thus far.
Thank you. Candidate Johnson, do you support the regulation of cannabis sales both for medical and adult use in the city of Montclair? Discuss why you do or why you do not.
Well, first, I think we need to clarify the question. When we've had discussions about legalizing cannabis here in Montclair, there has been an outcry from many of our residents who don't want it, but I think they don't understand the question. So I need to clarify, we're not going to go solicit cannabis dispensaries to open up on every corner. That's not what we're talking about. Certainly, I would not want one next door to me, nor would I want a Nordstrom's or a gas station or any other retail establishment, but that's not what we're talking about. So several years ago, the people of Montclair, as you heard from Mr. Lopez, the people of Montclair voted to support cannabis dispensaries in this city, and our job is to give the majority of the people what they want. But we didn't, we fought it. But recently, the state decriminalized cannabis, so our local code enforcement officers and our police officers, their hands are tied. So it's here now. It's not like we're going to go recruit it. It's already here. The question is, do we think that those dispensaries should be paying into the city's tax coffers like every other retail establishment? And I say the answer is yes. If they're going to do retail sales, they need to support this city like everybody else.
Thank you. Okay, so this round of questions are going to be individual questions for individual candidates that were submitted via the city's website. And I'm going to start with candidate Miranda. We'll start with you. How long have you been a resident of Montclair? Have you actively participated as a leader, coordinator, or volunteer in programs sponsored by the city of Montclair? And if so, what programs?
I moved to the city of Montclair in 2014, and I have not participated in anything since then. I'm like most residents here. I came here, I bought the house because I got a good deal on it. It was in between, at that time, me and my fiance. Now she's my wife. And, I don't know much about the city of Montclair, not until recently. I'm like most residents. If you look at volunteering and stuff like that, I'm not a volunteer. All I did through my company that I had was I would donate to different charities that I felt needed it, such as dog rescues and whatnot. So, and I was thinking about this question too, because I was like looking at myself and thinking, what am I going to say when they ask me this type of question? Have I volunteered? Have I done this and that? And I looked up statistics. 75% of the U.S. population doesn't volunteer, so only 25%, so I don't feel so bad anymore. But I just recently sold my company in July, and with that, that's part of the reason why I'm running. Well, other reasons, not because of that, but now I have the free time to look up all this information, and what I found out about the city has compelled me to run, as well as, oh man, where did I leave off? So, yeah, that's pretty much it. I lost my train of thought. Thank you.
That's okay. That happens. I'm perfectly aware of that. Candidate Johnson, we're going to ask you. Residents value the curb appeal of their community. And have expressed concerns about an increase in litter and trash dumping across the community. What are your ideas, or are there enforcement regulations that could be implemented to preserve and beautify our community?
Well, I hear those residents who are concerned about litter and trash. I have the same concerns myself. There are some, it seems like every Monday morning, there's fast food containers in my street, and I need to start my Monday by cleaning up other people's trash. It's really unfortunate. But there are some things that we can do. We may not want to, but we have to be part of the problem. We have to be part of the solution. We need to do something about it. So if you see trash, it'd be great if we had a team of people, if we could afford to pay a team of people to spend their time going around looking for trash. But right now, during this pandemic, we don't have the budget for that. So we have to do something ourselves. If you see something, and there's trash in the street in front of your house, pick it up. If you see people leaving it, you can very politely, without being rude, you can very politely ask them if they could take their trash with them. And if it's an ongoing problem, if it's not small trash, if it's huge trash, there are people that you can call that will handle that. So there have been times I've seen mattresses dumped on the side of the road. Call Burtec. They'll take care of that. If your neighbor's house has stuff, it looks like a hoarder's residence and there's stuff spilling out onto the street, call in code enforcement and they'll take care of that. So there's several avenues, but it starts with us taking matters in our own hands.
Thank you. Okay, candidate Lopez, this one's for you. Local government is a nonpartisan by nature, meaning that council members are not supposed to advocate platforms based on being either Republican or Democrat or independent. In various social media posts, you make clear your activism and conservative credentials. You're also an elected member of the San Bernardino County Republican Central Committee, District 4. If elected, would you advocate that the City Council take stances on issues that are in agreement with the conservative positions of the San Bernardino County Republican Central Committee, such as religious freedoms, abortion, immigration, LGBTQ or TQ rights, etc.?
My political party affiliation is irrelevant to the office. I think we should, to be fair, I guess, ask everyone here what their political party affiliation is. But no, there are issues. I've been very good at representing issues that are pertinent to the day-to-day lives of Montclair residents without making them partisan. I have a track record of doing that. If there's any concern from anyone, whoever the author of that question is, by all means, reach out and talk to me. But no. But I think on one of those issues already, the city has already taken an issue by releasing a social media post on, I believe, National Coming Out Day. So I think it's a moot point. And I think they're irrelevant. But I have had no one on the campaign trail or anything try to raise an issue about my political leanings. They have been in line with the majority of a good chunk of Montclair residents that are hard-paying taxpayers, families that want to raise their families in a city with less government intrusion and respect for property rights, and trying to keep taxes low to lessen the burden on those who are hardworking. I don't think that is a Republican or Democrat issue. That's just a way of life and a working family issue, and I'll choose to stand with working families any day over any political party ideology.
Thank you. Candidate Orozco, in your candidate statement, you mentioned a program to extend street improvements to parts of the city that have been underdeveloped. What parts of the city are you referring to as underdeveloped, and what street improvement projects are you proposing?
The part of the city that I see that is not developed is the south side of Montclair, so below Holt. And I think there's a lot of empty spaces there that we can utilize. We can build homes. We can build single-family homes. We can build up, and make them affordable for residents. We can, also, as in the planning that just recently came out, have businesses on the bottom and have residents on the top floors, and make them affordable, because we are all working class families, and I think it's important to develop those that area south of Montclair. I know we do need to finish the Gold Line. We do need to improve the Montclair Place, because more and more businesses are leaving because of the coronavirus. So we do also need to work on south of Montclair to make sure that we beautify and make all of Montclair beautiful and not just the north side. Thank you.
Thank you. And candidate Pipersky, as a former police officer, it is likely that you're sensitive to the police defunding issues. If elected, do you pledge to work toward improving police relations with all members of the community? And can you step back from your career in public safety to equally and fairly support all city programs? Please give examples as to how you would demonstrate this.
Well, I can always support all programs. I've been a very strong advocate for Public Works, Fire Department, as well as the Police Department. Defunding the police, we need to sit there and increase funding to the Police Department through increased training, community outreach programs. You know, with the 17 officers down, we do not have the ability to go out. If schools were in session today, we would probably not even have school resource officers. We need to bring up the forces so we can actually engage with the community more. Back in, God, it's about 20 years ago now, I had a program that we used to play, and it showed every officer's picture, and it would be played at events to introduce officers to the public. The public needs to see the police department as their police officers. They need to know that what we do, the police department is not a secret society. We had ride-along programs where people could come out and actually see what was going on. So I believe we should increase the funding to the police department as well as all aspects of the city and all the departments. We work well with human services. The police department's always during the food giveaways, collecting toys during the food drives. Police and fire are always out for that. These are all good programs that we need to maintain.
Okay, thank you. So this question will be the same for all of you. We're going to start back here with candidate Orozco, and it kind of stems off of what candidate Pipersky was just sharing. Recent nationwide protests advocate for reforms to law enforcement policies and procedures and the redirecting of funds to social service programs, commonly referred to as defunding the police. What does defunding the police mean to you, and do you support it? You have 2 minutes.
Defunding the police is never a good idea. They're the ones that protect us. No matter what department we look at, there's always bad in everything in out there. Defunding the police is only going to hurt the community. I think we need to provide more money to them so that they can get more police officers out there to help service the communities and help, you know, everybody in all walks of life. I can give you an example of a month and a half ago. You know, 2 of my dogs got out of our gate. Never happened ever before. And I always remembered there's a police officer always sitting at Monte Vista. And, you know, mind you, they're working, but they're sitting there, and I know that I can go and I can ask for help. And that's what I did. I went and I asked for help, and he actually found both of our dogs, which just absolutely, you know, my family was very happy. We were very scared for them. We thought that they were going to end up on the freeway or end up underneath a car. And little things like that make the police department, you know, that much greater, that it's not just protecting, it's servicing the community. And I think defunding them is the wrong thing to do. We should not do that. And we need to support them in any way we can. Thank you.
Nationwide protests advocate for reforms to law enforcement policies and procedures and the redirecting of funds to social service programs, commonly referred to as defunding the police. What does defunding the police mean to you, and do you support it?
Well, I think Mr. Pipersky touched on how there's 17 vacancies currently in that department. So I guess you could say that it's kind of already being defunded in its own natural way. So with that, I think instead of completely just defunding something like the police department, we should look first to see how we can run a city without actually having to increase our police force and easing their burden. You know, there's many different ways to go about reaching one's objective. The interesting thing about this is if you look at Montclair, it had a certain situation back in the early 80s that you could say is kind of similar. What was happening is back then you had some apartment buildings, there was a lot of gang infestation, a lot of crime. And the city came up with a task force, and in that task force they came out with two objectives. Well, two solutions. The short-term solution was increasing police presence around those apartment buildings. The interesting thing about it is that was a short-term solution. However, the long-term solution was working with the owners of those apartment complexes and beautifying them, talking with the owners to also get a little bit better of a background check on the people coming into the apartment buildings. So it was a cooperation between the city and the complexes where they were having this problem. And right there, you can see the short-term solution was increasing cops, the force out there. The long-term solution, though, wasn't just maintaining that police presence out there. It was the same result through a different avenue.
Thank you. Candidate Lopez, what does defunding the police mean to you, and do you support it?
Defunding the police, to me, is part of a broader political agenda that should not have place in the city of Montclair. Let me unequivocally say that our cops should not be the scapegoat for a political agenda or an ideology. As Mr. Pipersky said, our city is down 17 officers, and depending on how far back you want to go, that number actually increases. I remember 2 years ago, we had a statistic out that our police officers were the lowest paid in the region, below Rialto, and even below the city of Barstow, of all places. Our police need the adequate funding they need to do their jobs. They should not be painted with the brush that they operate with some agenda themselves, or that they're all guilty of any list of grievances that are currently being thrown out there in the culture. I was around as a kid in the 80s when the apartment area around Bandera and Kingsley and that region around Ramona, and our cops did the best they could to quelch the gang infestation that we had, because we were being plagued by crime, plagued by attacks, and our cops did a very good job at quelching them. I know there might have been some controversy, but the only ones that were complaining were those that were actually committing crimes and trying to find excuses to skirt the law. And I applaud our officers then. I applaud our officers now, every single one of them, for their service. I think they're entitled to adequate pay, and I applaud the council's effort for the recent 13% increase that was given in the last budget. I do think we need to up community services, but they've done a damn good job currently, and we could only compliment what they've done now, and we could only move up. But to cut them would be detrimental to our safety. They don't just
Thank you. Candidate Johnson, what does defunding the police mean to you, and do you support it?
Thank you, Mr. Walborn. Well, what we've heard, the battle cry has been to defund the police and take money out of the police budget and put them into community and human services. What I don't understand is why those two things are mutually exclusive. Frankly, what I think we should be doing when it comes to the police department is that, number one, we need to make sure that they are fully staffed, but we need to add additional staff, because they need to have people that they can partner with, mental health professionals and social workers who are available during the same hours that the officers are available. So if the police officer responds to a call and deems that a mental health professional is needed, there's one available. And in terms of community and human services, that's a totally separate thing, and I don't think you can take money from the police and put it somewhere else. We need to fund both of those. Both of those are terribly important, and they're not mutually exclusive. So take money away from the police? Absolutely not. Ramp them up and give them all the resources they need? Yes. And also fund all of the community and human services programs that we need to do? Yes, to both. That's why we need to make sure that we find ways to generate revenue for the city so that we can do all of the things that we need to do.
Thank you. Candidate Pipersky, what does defunding the police mean to you, and do you support it?
I do not support any type of defunding of the police. Because we're down on people, that is not a defunding of the police department. A lot of the issues people have talked about, the grievances that they have had, the city of Montclair, as well as most Southern California agencies, have addressed these issues years ago. The problems that they're having on the East Coast do not take place on the West Coast. You know, when you sit there and see certain types of activities on TV, it's not happening in California, it's not happening in Southern California, and it's definitely not happening in Montclair. We have some of the best training around. We have force option simulators. Councilwoman Johnson got to go through the force option simulators. These are things, and when I say a force option simulator, it's not a shoot, don't shoot situation. It is the different types of options that we have available to train our officers. We need to continue training on a regular basis. The peace officer standards and training, we all meet the standards set forth by the state of California. We do training. We are mandated yearly to have a minimum amount of training on all aspects of law enforcement. So defunding the police, no way. It will not ever happen in this city. As far as additional training, absolutely. And we handle all of the things. The police department has just been dumped on for too many years to handle all of society's ills.
Thank you. Okay, so this next question will be starting with candidate Miranda. The number of individuals experiencing homelessness continues to rise throughout the communities across the state, including here in Montclair. What ideas do you have to help address homelessness in the city? You have 2 minutes.
Well, the other day I was reading an article on this topic, and it happened up in San Francisco. And the interesting thing about this was, you know, we all have funding for homelessness, and it's always been a problem here in California. We have the largest homeless population of any state in the country. And looking at what they were doing in San Francisco is they created an advisory committee. And in that committee, it wasn't made up of politicians. It wasn't made up of residents. It was actually made up of homeless people. Homeless people giving ideas as to how to help the homeless, the people who actually need the help. Not us politicians, not us residents, not anybody else, but the people who are actually suffering and what they actually need. And with that, they've seen great results. What that also has done is it empowered some of these homeless individuals to make a difference and see that difference, and actually gave some of them jobs so that they could improve their situation. So I think there's plenty of different ideas out there. That's just one that I came across the other day, and it would be interesting to see if something like that could take place within the city of Montclair.
Great, thank you. Candidate Lopez, what ideas do you have to help address homelessness in the city?
The city of Montclair is not immune to the homeless issue. It is statewide. I mean, it's nationwide, but let's just focus on the state and the county. Unfortunately, we do have a homeless population among us, and it's something that needs to be addressed. Every city is facing the issue. What I would advocate we do is continue the collaboration with the county mental health department and the county department of health, 2 separate agencies, but nonetheless, they complement one another. And let's seek state and federal funds that we can do to enhance job training for anyone that finds themselves in a homeless predicament. You know, there is that saying that if you feed a person for the day, they're fed for the day, but if you teach them to fish, they're fed for a lifetime. Well, likewise, the key is providing a job. Let's bring in adequate job training of a variety of fields, and they don't even have to be to the college degree level. They could be trades. I'm a big advocate of trades, by the way. Let's get them job training to get them trained, find them a job, and from there, with a steady source of income, they can begin to be lifted up and provide their needs and the basic essentials. But homeless people should not be scorned. They should not be looked down upon. They are equal among us. They might be in a different situation than us, but nonetheless, they deserve an equal shot at pursuing life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And let's try to help and assist them, but let's do it collaboratively with other resources and departments so that way we don't bear the brunt of the financial expenses. And that is the offer that I would make or suggestion I would make as a council member on the city council.
Thank you. Candidate Johnson, what ideas do you have to help address homelessness in the city?
Well, homelessness is a problem, we know that, but homelessness is not illegal. And when I see homeless people, my first thought is, there but by the grace of God go I. So, and I'm proud to announce that we have worked in this city, we've worked really hard on homelessness. I've worked with some businesses that were planning to open and were afraid because there were so many problems associated with homelessness. But our code enforcement officers were able to secure a grant to help us with that effort, and they work very closely with representatives from our local churches and others, and they actually go out and touch people every single week, every day. And so, for example, one day I was here for some reason, and one of the code enforcement officers called me over and he said, I want you to meet somebody. And he introduced me to this gentleman, whose name I won't state, but he introduced me to this gentleman, and he said, this is him, and he has been homeless for, a couple of years. I've reached out to him several times, and he didn't want help. But today, he agreed to help, and today I'm taking him to a new place where he can find shelter. That's the kind of work that we need to continue in this city. We need to have people who are dedicated to addressing that problem. We can't just look at them and blow them off or treat them poorly, but we do have a dedicated team of people who help our homeless folks, and there are fewer homeless people on the street now than there were before then, and that business that was concerned has opened, they're thriving, and when I asked him about it the other day, he said, we haven't seen any homeless people around here anymore.
Thank you. Candidate Pipersky, what ideas do you have to help address homelessness in the city?
As an officer, I used to have to deal with the homeless that were out there in the field. A lot of these people have mental problems, and no amount of job training, nothing's going to help them in that sense. We have to sit there and figure out a way to house them. Some of them are a danger to themselves and a danger to others. When they are that bad, we take them to a facility to get them taken care of. The city of Montclair, with our code enforcement, when the county needed a program to deal with the homeless people within the county, they did not have a plan. The city of Montclair had a plan, and the county has utilized our plan to deal with homeless throughout the county. We have got the federal funding through the congruent and non-congruent housing. We're able to sit there and house these people, some in our city, or relocate them to other cities. But we are dealing with it currently now, and we probably do it far better than most other cities around.
Thank you. Candidate Orozco, what ideas do you have to help address homelessness in the city?
A few months ago, I was reading about the homeless, and in California alone, there's about 130,000 homeless people. Some are unsheltered. It's about 69% are unsheltered. I agree with Mr. Lopez. Mental health is the biggest reason, but we also need to remember that some of these families are homeless because they were ill and they didn't have enough money. They had to make a choice of their medical or their prescriptions or to pay their rent, and they chose to do the other. And, we are all probably one paycheck away from being homeless. And, we need to walk around, ask how they became homeless. Was it, understand their situation. Make them real. Do not shame them because they are homeless. Give them job training, affordable housing. We have a lot, like I said, in South Montclair, a lot of empty lots that we can build on and have affordable housing for them. Get grants that are needed for these. You know, we are one disaster away from becoming homeless, but COVID-19 is our disaster. And so we need to make sure that we take care of them, because it could be our, our seniors that are the most vulnerable right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our questions for this evening. There were some that were left on the table, but we don't, in the interest of time, we'll not be able to get to them. So we will begin with our closing statements from each candidate, and we will begin on the far end down here with candidate Pipersky. You have 3 minutes, please.
Working and volunteering and being involved in the city of Montclair has given me a knowledge and understanding of how our local government works. I know the challenges we as a city face. Working with budgets has helped me to gain a knowledge of the importance of keeping a balanced budget and working to the best of my ability with what we have. I have always tried to find ways to save money. Working with FEMA due to COVID-19, I have submitted reimbursements when California declared the state of emergency. Seeing firsthand what all the employees face and seeing their work and dedication makes me extremely proud to be among them. As your council member, I will fight to better serve all the residents of Montclair. I love this city. As a police officer, we never knew what the day would bring, but I was willing to risk my life for the people of Montclair and be there for many in their darkest moments. I have gotten to know many of the residents from all walks of life. While working the streets and getting to know their needs, I run into most people at the Stater Brothers, people I have arrested, people I have dealt with, and all of them, if you treat them with respect, treat you with respect back. I have dedicated 40 years of my life to this great city. My work ethic, commitment, and dedication speak for themselves. I am committed to advocating for senior citizens, youth, and residents. I am extremely proud of the Human Services Department for bringing recognized programs and activities to all residents. I will be challenging getting the services, it will be challenging getting the services back to where they were before COVID-19, but I know it can be done, and it will be done. Supporting our Chamber of Commerce is extremely important to me. I vow to do my best in supporting our administration to bring new businesses to Montclair and retaining the businesses we already have. Supporting the Gold Line, housing develops, and business developments will bring our city to another level. I want to be involved in seeing our city flourish and continue where Carolyn Raff left off. Our council has done an incredible job. I want to be a part of the city's future. I hope I can count on your vote. You can learn more about me on votepipersky.com. And I want to thank the CAC, the City of Montclair, for hosting this forum. I also sit there and listen to other people talk about soliciting grants. There's all this grant money out there. My job currently is to get that grant money. There's not that much out there, and we are working our darndest to get whatever monies that are available through the state and federal governments. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Johnson, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Well, over the course of the time that I've been living here in Montclair, I've done quite a bit, and most of it's volunteerism. Most recently, I've been a volunteer at the Montclair Chamber to strengthen businesses and help them to thrive. I've assisted with programs dedicated to seniors. I've worked with youth, both in elementary, middle, and high school. I have been in the ground, from the ground up, cleaning up alleyways, picking up trash, and even building a new park from the ground up. I've met with police and fire unions to hear their concerns and with public safety, and I've looked at various options to generate revenue, and I think that what we've tried to do is carry out the voters' wishes. And we've talked about several things like freeway widening and the Gold Line, and I've facilitated prayer walks and vigils. I've met one-on-one with citizens to resolve issues like potholes and signage, blight, and rodents. And I hosted a voter registration campaign. And I spent, as you know, 20 years as a planning commission addressing infrastructure repairs and maintenance. Now, I've been married to my husband, Warren, for 39 years. And we raised 2 children who went to the local schools here. And they were very, very active children. And I really support families because I get it. I understand what it's like to work a full-time job. I worked a full-time, very stressful job at Kaiser Permanente, where I retired from there. But I worked that job. I came home, I raised my children, I took them to all of their activities. There's homework, there's baseball practice, there's basketball practice, there's church activities. It's hard work. I know it's hard work, and for those families now who are struggling because their children are not in school, I totally get it. But know that I'll fight for you to get all of the support that you need as a family, because doing the work of a family has a lot of pleasure and benefits, but it's hard work, so I totally get it. So I also wanted to let you know that I am the only candidate that was named Person of the Year. In 2014, I received congressional recognition as the Montclair Woman of the Year for 2014, and I got that distinction by all of the volunteerism that I had done over decades. I am supported by Mayor John Dutray, Mayor Pro Tem Carolyn Raff, former Mayor Ginger Eaton, Council members Carissa Martinez, former Council member Leonard Paulitz, Monte Vista Water Board of Directors member Manny Martinez, Montclair Planning Commission Chair Barry Rowley, Montclair Commissioner Sergio Sagun, Arturo Padilla, Laura Mielheiser, Rosa Rangel, and Richard Escalona, as well as a host of Montclair residents and Montclair business owners. Thank you to the CAC and city staff for doing this, and to the residents, vote Tenice Johnson, City of Montclair.
Thank you. Candidate Lopez, you have 3 minutes.
To the Community Action Committee, thank you so much for your time in putting this together. I appreciate it. To the fellow residents, I thank you as well for tuning in and watching this broadcast. You know, I'm a Montclair son. I may have been born in Upland, but I was raised here in Montclair from my birth to 44 years now. I love this city. I am Montclair grown, and my blood runs thick with Cavalier pride. I'd be honored to continue giving back and serving the people of Montclair on the city council. This town has been good to our family. My father serves on the Monte Vista Water District and has been there for 17 years, representing you and fighting for you as ratepayers. Giving back is something we do. If elected, I do pledge to support our efforts to bring the Gold Line rail system to Montclair. It's crucial for our economy. I support businesses, good-paying businesses, which means jobs for our residents, and also support programs to continue stopping gang activity and graffiti, support programs that will clean up our alleyways and streets from illegal dumping and blight, strengthen our police and fire department. I am proud to say I'm the only candidate up here supported by Montclair firefighters and the San Bernardino County firefighters. Make no mistake, those that keep us safe trust me to represent you on the city council. I pledge to keep our current youth programs and senior programs and health programs and college to career programs intact and in place. And I know that many others will also agree. You have more than one fighter in this. We will guard those and protect those for the people that they serve. I've had 25 years of involvement in this town. I started when I was age 13, walking precincts, trying to get council members elected, trying to influence public policy. That same fighting spirit has not diminished. I pledge to fight for you. I'll work collaboratively with everybody of different viewpoints and with all 4 other members of the city council for the benefit of Montclair. I ask for your vote. Go to benlopez.com, and I'm supported by, again, Mayor Dutray, Bill Rue, County Supervisor Kurt Hagman. I thank you for your time again, and you have a good evening.
Thank you. Candidate Miranda, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. The last thing I would like to say tonight is to all the residents of Montclair, be critical of all the candidates up here. And I mean that because I want everybody to really try to find the best candidate up here. And start with me. If you don't think I'm genuine, if you don't like my answers, don't vote for me. That's all that I really want in this campaign, is for the residents to really, truly do their research and make the best, most well-informed decision that they can make. And in order to do that, we should be critical of the candidates and the tax measures. You know, don't just vote for someone because you lean left, you lean right, or you have a friend, or you know one of the candidates, or one of your friends told you you should vote for this person. No, make the decision on your own. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Orozco, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. We have discussed a lot tonight. Some of these conversations have been tough. These times are unprecedented, and we are all trying to survive. One thing we all have in common is we all want the best for the city of Montclair. Over the years, the city of Montclair has undeniably made much progress towards realizing its full potential. Nevertheless, there remains much need for emphasis in development that addresses other overlooked groups and aspects of the community. We need to work towards broadening our focus more actively. We need to collaborate in improving the quality of life for all. We need to increase public safety, road maintenance, and economic prosperity. We need to establish goals and discover ways to move our city forward. We also need to increase our efforts in sustainability to better reap the benefits of self-sufficiency and security for all residents. We can best enjoy our communities and families when we know the city's basic operating resources remain responsibly managed, abundant, affordable, and working in harmony with the environment. Let's continue to maximize the city's infrastructure and optimize accessibility, efficiency, and organization of our city. We need to provide resources for South Montclair that have been overlooked for years. We have put all our focus on North Montclair with the GO line and the Montclair Place. Let's involve and beautify all of Montclair. At the same time, we cannot forget the welfare of our elderly citizens. We cannot cut any funding with the programs that we have with them. The priority much more now with them during this difficult time. Our seniors need us most now after having contributed so much of their life to our community. Let's work hard to straighten the systems in place for everybody. With all of these goals in mind, I truly believe we can be intentional about designing a community we all want to live in. Let's work together by ensuring all voices are heard and all needs are addressed. Finally, I'm proud to be endorsed by Councilman Bill Rue, many residents, business owners, community leaders, and teachers. I will be honored to serve on Montclair City Council. Vote Juliet Orozco for Montclair City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank all the candidates for their participation this evening. I also want to thank all of you who submitted questions for this forum. We do hope that you heard the answers that you wanted to hear and are able to make a more informed decision about your vote coming up on November 3rd. Remember that every vote does count. The City Council Candidates Forum is hosted by the Montclair Community Activities Commission, the Montclair Chamber of Commerce, and the refreshments were provided for the candidates courtesy of the Women's Club of Montclair. Thank you all for watching, and have a good evening.